It was past 2 in the morning when Travis Kelce found himself driving aimlessly through the empty streets of Kansas City. The weight of another grueling season, the constant pressure, and the endless media attention had left him feeling suffocated. All he wanted was a moment of peace, away from the cameras and the expectation that came with being one of the NFL's biggest stars. The streets were eerily quiet, with only the occasional streetlight casting long shadows across the pavement. Travis had been driving for over an hour, no destination in mind, just trying to clear his head. That's when he heard it, a voice so pure and haunting that it made him slam on the brakes. He sat in his car for a moment, confused. Was someone really singing at this hour? The sound seemed to be coming from a small restaurant tucked between a laundromat and an old barber shop. The place looked modest, almost forgotten, but warm light spilled from its windows into the dark street. Travis turned off the engine and stepped out of his truck. The voice became clearer now. It was definitely a child, and they were singing with an emotion that sent chills down his spine. He approached the restaurant slowly, his curiosity overriding any concern about being recognized. Through the large front window, he could see inside. The restaurant was small and cozy, with mismatched chairs and tables that had clearly seen better days. Vintage photographs hung on the wall, and string lights created a warm, intimate atmosphere. But what captured his attention completely was the tiny figure on the makeshift stage. A girl who couldn't be more than 10 years old stood behind an old microphone, her small hands gripping it tightly. She wore a simple blue dress that was clearly too big for her, and her dark hair was pulled back in a neat ponytail. But it was her voice that left Travis speechless, mature beyond her years, filled with a pain that no child should ever know. In her left hand, she clutched a faded photograph. Even from outside, Travis could see that her eyes were red from crying, but she continued to sing with unwavering determination. The few customers in the restaurant sat in complete silence, some wiping away tears as they listened. Travis found himself transfixed. He had heard thousands of singers throughout his life, had been to countless concerts and award shows, but there was something different about this little girl. Her voice carried a weight that spoke of real struggle, real heartbreak. As the song came to an end, the restaurant erupted in gentle applause. The girl curtsied shyly, stepped down from the stage, walking between the tables with a small donation box. Travis watched as customers dropped bills and coins into the box, many of them pausing to say kind words to her. Unable to resist any longer, Travis pushed open the restaurant door. A small bell chimed overhead, and a few heads turned in his direction. He was wearing a simple hoodie and baseball cap, hoping to remain unrecognized, and thankfully, most people seemed too focused on the girl to pay him much attention. He chose a corner table and sat down, still trying to process what he had just witnessed. A middle-aged man with kind eyes and a worn apron approached his table. "Welcome to Moonbeam Diner," the man said with a warm smile. "I'm Bartholomew, but everyone calls me Bart. You're out pretty late tonight." "Couldn't sleep," Travis replied, keeping his voice low. "That girl who was singing? Does she perform here often?" Bart's expression softened immediately. "Serafina? Oh yes, she's here almost every night after her grandfather gets too tired to watch her. Been coming here for about 3 months now." 3 months? Travis was surprised. That's a long time for someone so young to be performing regularly. Bart pulled out a chair and sat down, clearly wanting to share the story. "Her name is Serafina, but everyone calls her Sarah. She's trying to raise money for her grandfather's surgery." "Ezekiel, that's her grandfather. He's been sick for a while now. Heart problem. The doctors say he needs an operation, but..." Bart shrugged sadly. "Well, you know how it is. Medical bills aren't cheap." Travis felt his chest tighten. "What about her parents?" "It's just her and Ezekiel," Bart explained. "Has been since she was about 5. Zeke raised her all by himself, worked construction his whole life. He's a proud man, doesn't like asking for help. But when Sarah found out about the surgery, she insisted on doing something to help, started singing here to raise money." As if summoned by their conversation, Sarah appeared at their table. Up close, Travis could see that she was even younger than he had initially thought, with large hazel eyes that seemed far too serious for a 10-year-old. "Hi there," she said to Travis, her voice small but confident. "I'm Sarah. Thank you for listening to my song." Travis smiled warmly at her. "You have an incredible voice, Sarah. That was beautiful." A small smile crossed her face, the first genuine expression of happiness he had seen from her. "Thank you. I've been practicing a lot." My grandpa Zeke says that if you're going to do something, you should do it right. Your grandfather sounds like a wise man, Travis said gently. Bart was telling me a little about him. What kind of work did he do in construction? Sarah's eyes lit up with pride. Oh, Grandpa Zeke built lots of important buildings around Kansas City. He worked on hospitals and schools and even helped build parts of Arrowhead Stadium where the Chiefs play. He always tells me stories about working there, says it was one of his favorite jobs because he knew it would make people happy. Travis felt as if the wind had been knocked out of him. Arrowhead Stadium, his home field, the place where he had achieved some of his greatest victories and made countless memories. This little girl's grandfather had actually helped build it. Arrowhead Stadium? He repeated, trying to keep his voice steady. Yep. Sarah nodded enthusiastically. He has pictures and everything. He's really proud of that work. Says every time he watches the Chiefs play on TV, he can point to parts of the stadium and say, I built that, but now... Her voice trailed off, and the sadness returned to her eyes. Now he's sick, Travis finished gently. Sarah nodded, clutching the donation box tighter against her chest. The doctors say he needs the surgery soon, but it costs so much money. I keep singing every night, and people are really nice and give what they can, but she looked down at the box, then back up at Travis with determination that broke his heart. But I won't give up. Grandpa Zeke never gave up on me, so I won't give up on him. In that moment, Travis knew his life had just taken an unexpected turn. This wasn't just a chance encounter. It felt like destiny. Travis couldn't sleep that night. He lay in his massive bed in his expensive house, staring at the ceiling and thinking about Sarah and her grandfather Ezekiel. The image of that tiny girl clutching the donation box, singing her heart out to save the man who had raised her, was burned into his mind. By 6 in the morning, he had made a decision. He threw on a hoodie and jeans and drove back to the neighborhood where Moonbeam Diner was located. The restaurant wouldn't open for hours, but he wanted to see the area in daylight, to understand more about where Sarah came from. The neighborhood was working class, with modest homes and small business that had clearly been there for decades. It reminded him of the area where he had grown up, where families looked out for each other, and everyone knew everyone else's business. As he drove slowly down the residential streets, he tried to imagine which house might be Sarah. Later that evening, Travis returned to Moonbeam Diner. He arrived earlier this time, hoping to have a longer conversation with Sarah before her performance. Bart recognized him immediately and waved him over to the same corner table. Back again? Bart asked with a knowing smile. That little girl really got to you, didn't she? Something like that, Travis admitted. I keep thinking about what she said about her grandfather working on Arrowhead Stadium. That place, it means a lot to me. I figured you might have some connection to football, Bart said, studying Travis's face carefully. You look familiar, but I can't quite place you. Travis tensed slightly, but decided to take a chance. I'm Travis Kelce. I play for the Chiefs. Bart's eyes widened in recognition. Well, I'll be damned. Travis Kelce, sitting right here in my restaurant. Sarah's going to flip when she finds out her grandfather helped build your workplace. Actually, Travis said quickly, I'd prefer if you didn't tell her just yet. I want to get to know them a little better first, understand their situation. Is that okay? Bart nodded thoughtfully. I respect that. Too many people would have just thrown money at the problem and walked away. You want to do this right. When Sarah arrived that evening, she was carrying a worn school backpack and looked exhausted. Travis watched as she greeted the regular customers warmly, checking on an elderly couple and making sure a young mother had everything she needed for her toddler. She's like that with everyone, Bart observed, following Travis's gaze, always putting others first, just like her grandfather taught her. Sarah eventually made her way over to Travis's table, her face brightening when she saw him. You came back. I was hoping you would. I couldn't stay away, Travis said honestly. I was wondering if you might tell me more about your grandfather. He sounds like an interesting man. Sarah's entire demeanor changed as she talked about Ezekiel. The tiredness seemed to fade from her face, replaced by pure love and admiration. Grandpa Zeke is the strongest person I know. When they weren't able to take care of me anymore, he didn't even hesitate. He just said, Sarah's family, and family takes care of family. That must have been hard for him, taking on such a big responsibility, Travis said gently. He never made it feel like a burden, Sarah replied firmly. He always made me feel wanted. He taught me how to ride a bike and helped with my homework every night. When I was scared of thunderstorms, he would tell me stories about all the buildings he helped create, how they were strong enough to weather any storm. She paused, her voice becoming quieter. But now he's the one who needs protecting, and I don't know if I'm strong enough. Travis felt his heart break a little more. Sarah, sometimes being strong doesn't mean carrying everything by yourself. Sometimes it means accepting help when it's offered. Before Sarah could respond, the diner's door opened and an older gentleman walked in slowly, using a cane for support. He was tall but stooped, with white hair and weathered hands that spoke of decades of hard labor. Despite his obvious frailty, there was dignity in the way he carried himself. "Grandpa Zeke!" Sarah jumped up and rushed to his side, taking his arm gently. "What are you doing here? You're supposed to be resting." "Couldn't sleep knowing you were out here alone," Ezekiel said, in a gruff but tender voice. "Besides, I wanted to make sure you weren't staying out too late. You have school tomorrow." As they walked toward Travis's table, he got his first good look at the man who had helped build his stadium. Ezekiel's eyes were sharp and intelligent, and there was something familiar about him that Travis couldn't quite place. "Grandpa, I want you to meet someone," Sarah said excitedly. "This is the nice man I told you about yesterday. He really likes my singing." Ezekiel studied Travis carefully, his contractor's eye taking in every detail. "Pleased to meet you, son. I'm Ezekiel, but most folks call me Zeke." Travis stood and extended his hand, which Ezekiel shook with a grip that was still surprisingly firm. "Travis, it's an honor to meet you, sir." "Sir?" Ezekiel chuckled. "Haven't been called that in a while. You're not from around here, are you?" "No, sir, but I work in Kansas City," Travis replied carefully. "What kind of work do you do, Travis?" Ezekiel asked, settling into a chair with Sarah's help. Travis hesitated for a moment. "I'm in sports. Football, actually." Ezekiel's eyes lit up with interest. "Football, eh? Professional or coaching?" "Profession. I play for the Kansas City Chiefs." The change in Ezekiel's expression was immediate and profound. His eyes widened, and he leaned forward in his chair. "The Chiefs? You play at Arrowhead Stadium?" "Yes, sir. I've been playing there for several years." Ezekiel was quiet for a long moment, staring at Travis, with an intensity that made him slightly uncomfortable. Finally, the older man spoke, his voice filled with emotion. "I worked on that stadium, you know. Back in the early 2000s, when they did the major renovations, spent 8 months of my life there, working on the luxury boxes and some of the structural improvements." He paused, shaking his head in amazement. "And now, here you are, sitting in this little diner with my granddaughter." Sarah looked back and forth between them, clearly sensing the significance of the moment, even if she didn't fully understand it. "What position do you play, son?" Ezekiel asked. "Tight end. Number 87. Ezekiel's face broke into a wide grin. "Well, I'll be damned. Travis Kelce. I've watched you play on TV, never imagining I'd meet you in person." "Sarah, do you realize you've been talking to one of the best football players in the world?" But instead of being starstruck, Sarah just smiled and took Travis's hand. "I don't know much about football, but I know he's nice, and he listens when I sing, really listen. That's more important to me than being famous." In that simple statement, Travis realized that Sarah had just taught him something profound about what truly mattered in life. Fame and success meant nothing compared to genuine human connection, kindness. However, as the evening wore on and he watched Ezekiel struggle with simple movement, Travis could see time was running out. The man's condition was clearly deteriorating, and despite Sarah's brave effort, they were nowhere near raising enough money for the surgery. That's when Travis began to formulate a plan that would change all their lives forever. The next morning, Travis woke up with a sense of purpose he hadn't felt in years. He had spent most of the night researching heart surgeons and medical facilities, using his connections to get information about the best possible care for Ezekiel. What he discovered both encouraged and alarmed him. The good news was that Ezekiel's condition, while serious, was definitely treatable with the right surgery. The bad news was that the cost was even higher than he had initially imagined, nearly $200,000, including the surgery, hospital stay, and follow-up care. Travis had that kind of money in his checking account, could write a check that afternoon and solve everything. But he had learned enough about Ezekiel's character to know that the proud man would never accept what he would see as charity. This was going to require a more delicate approach. He decided to visit them at home first, to better understand their living situation and build more trust before proposing any kind of help. Bart had given him their address the night before, along with a warning that Ezekiel might not appreciate unexpected visitors. The house was a small, two-story home in an older neighborhood, with a tiny front yard that was meticulously maintained despite the family's financial struggle. The paint was fading, and the roof looked like it needed work, but everything was clean and well cared for. Travis knocked gently on the front door, hoping he wasn't overstepping boundaries. After a few moments, Sarah opened the door, her face lighting up with surprise and delight. "Travis, what are you doing here?" "I was in the neighborhood and thought I might say hello," he said, immediately realizing how weak that sounded. Sarah either didn't notice or didn't care about the obviousness of his excuse. "Come in. Grandpa Zeke is in the living room. He's been talking about meeting you all morning." The interior of the house was as modest as Travis had expected, but it was filled with warmth and love. Family photos covered every available surface, and handmade craft that were clearly Sarah's artwork decorated the wall. Despite their financial struggle, this was obviously a home where people cared for each other. Ezekiel was sitting in a worn recliner, reading glasses perched on his nose as he studied what looked like medical documents. He looked up as Travis entered, and his face creased into a welcoming smile. "Well, if it isn't the famous football player," Ezekiel said, struggling to get out of his chair. "Please don't get up, sir," Travis said quickly, moving to shake Ezekiel's hand. "I hope you don't mind me dropping by." "Mind? Hell no, I don't mind. It's not every day we get visited by a celebrity." Ezekiel gestured toward a couch that had clearly seen better days. "Sit down. Make yourself comfortable. Sarah, why don't you get our guest something to drink?" As Sarah bustled off to the kitchen, Travis looked around the living room. On the mantelpiece, he could see several framed photographs of construction sites, including one that he was almost certain showed Arrowhead Stadium during renovation. "Is that Arrowhead?" he asked, pointing to the photo. Ezekiel's chest puffed up with obvious pride. "Sure is. That was taken during the 2007 renovation project. See that section there?" He pointed to a specific area of the stadium. "I spent 3 weeks working on those luxury suites. Had to be perfect. They told us important people would be sitting." Travis smiled, realizing that he had probably sat in one of those very suites many times over the years. "You did beautiful work, sir. That stadium has been my second home for years now. Must be something, playing in front of all those people," Ezekiel mused. "I always wondered what it felt like to be down on that field, hearing the crowd cheer." "It's incredible," Travis admitted. "But you know what? In some ways, I think what you did was more important. You built something that brings joy to hundreds of thousands of people every year. That's a pretty amazing legacy." Ezekiel was quiet for a moment, clearly moved by Travis's words. "Never thought of it that way," he said finally. "To me, it was just work. Good, honest work, but still just work." Sarah returned with glasses of iced tea and settled on the floor near her grandfather's chair, as if being close to him made her feel safer. Travis noticed that she kept glancing at Ezekiel with worried eyes, as if she was constantly monitoring his condition. "Sarah tells me you're trying to raise money for surgery," Travis said carefully, testing the waters. Ezekiel's expression immediately became guarded. "That's our business to handle," he said firmly. "Sarah shouldn't be bothering strangers with our problem." "Grandpa, he's not a stranger," Sarah protested. "He's our friend, and I'm not bothering him," he asked. "It's okay, Sarah," Travis said gently. "Your grandfather is right to be protected. But sir, I want you to know that I don't see it as a problem being shared with me. I see it as, well, as one member of the chief's family helping another." Ezekiel raised an eyebrow. "Chief's family? You helped build our stadium. As far as I'm concerned, that makes you part of the organization, and we take care of our own." For a moment, Travis thought his approach might work. He could see Ezekiel considering his word, perhaps finding a way to accept help without feeling like he was taking charity. But then the older man's expression hardened. "That's kind of you to say, son, but I learned a long time ago that when something sounds too good to be true, it usually, I appreciate what you're trying to do, but we'll handle this ourselves." Travis felt his heart sink, but he tried another approach. What if it wasn't charity? What if it was a business arrangement? What kind of business arrangement? Ezekiel asked suspiciously. Travis thought quickly. The Chiefs organization is always looking for community outreach opportunity. What if we set up a concert series featuring Sarah? She could perform at some of our community events, maybe before some game. We could pay her a performer's fee that would cover your medical expense. Sarah's eyes widened with excitement, but Ezekiel shook his head firmly. Absolutely not. I won't have my granddaughter turned into some kind of publicity stunt. It wouldn't be a publicity stunt, Travis insisted. She has real talent. People should hear her sing. But Ezekiel had made up his mind. The answer is no, Travis. I appreciate what you're trying to do. I really do. But Sarah and I will figure this out on our own. The conversation was clearly over, and Travis could see that pushing further would only make things worse. He stood to leave, but Sarah followed him to the door. Don't give up on us, she whispered, her eyes pleading. Grandpa Zeke is just scared. He's always been the one who takes care of everyone else. He doesn't know how to let people take care of him. Travis knelt down to her level. I'm not giving up, Sarah, I promise. But your grandfather is a proud man, and I respect that. We just need to find the right way to help. As he drove away from their house, Travis's mind was racing. Ezekiel's pride was going to be the biggest obstacle to overcome, but Travis was more determined than ever to find a solution. This wasn't just about money anymore. It was about honoring a man who had contributed to something Travis loved and protecting a little girl who deserved to keep her grandfather. But what Travis didn't know was that Ezekiel's condition was about to take a dramatic turn for the worse, and time was running out faster than any of them realized. That night, as Sarah prepared for another performance at Moonbeam Diner, Ezekiel collapsed in their living room, clutching his chest and gasping for breath. The call came at 3 in the morning. Travis jerked awake, his phone buzzing insistently on the nightstand. The number was unfamiliar, but something told him to answer it anyway. Travis. It was Sarah's voice, small and terrified. Travis, I need help. Grandpa Zeke is in the hospital. Travis was out of bed before she finished speaking. Where are you, Sarah? Which hospital? St. Mary's. We came in an ambulance about 2 hours ago. Grandpa collapsed at home and her voice broke. They said his heart stopped for almost a minute before the paramedics got it started. I'm on my way, Travis said, already pulling on clothes. Stay exactly where you are. Don't go anywhere, okay? The drive to St. Mary's Hospital felt like the longest 20 minutes of Travis's life. He kept thinking about Sarah, alone in that sterile environment, probably terrified out of her mind. When he finally burst through the emergency room doors, he found her sitting in a corner of the waiting room, still wearing the same blue dress she had worn to perform that evening. She looked so small, so lost, that Travis felt his heart break all over again. He sat down beside her and pulled her into a gentle hug, feeling her tiny body shake with suppressed sobs. How is he? Travis asked softly. They won't tell me much because I'm just a kid, Sarah said, wiping her nose with a tissue that had clearly been used many times. The doctors keep asking about our insurance, who they should call, but Grandpa Zeke made me promise never to tell anyone we don't have good insurance. He's so embarrassed. Travis felt a surge of anger at a healthcare system that would worry about insurance while a man was fighting for his life, but he pushed those feelings aside. Right now, Sarah needed him to be calm and strong. Have you eaten anything? He asked. Sarah shook her head. I'm not hungry. Come on, Travis said, standing and extending his hand. Let's get you something from the cafeteria. You need to keep your strength up. As they walked through the hospital corridor, Travis used the opportunity to gather information. He spoke quietly to nurses and administrators, using his celebrity status to get answers that they wouldn't give to Sarah. What he learned was alarming. Ezekiel had suffered a major cardiac event. His heart was functioning at less than 30% capacity, and without immediate surgery, he might not survive another episode. The hospital was willing to stabilize him, but they were making it clear that the family needed to make decisions about payment and long-term care. Back in the cafeteria, Travis watched Sarah pick at a sandwich, her eyes constantly darting toward the door as if expecting news about her grandfather. Sarah, Travis said gently, I need to ask you something important. Is there anyone else I should call? Any other family member? Sarah shook her head sadly. It's just me and Grandpa Zeke. My parents, they died in a car accident when I was 5. Grandpa Zeke is all I have. The weight of that statement hit Travis like a physical blow. This 10-year-old girl was essentially alone in the world, except for a grandfather fighting for his life. If something happened to Ezekiel, what would become of Sarah? What about social services? Travis asked carefully. Have they talked to you about what might happen if Grandpa Zeke dies? Sarah finished bluntly. The social worker came by earlier. She said I'd probably go into foster care, at least until they could find relatives we don't have. She looked up at Travis with eyes that were far too mature for her age. But Grandpa Zeke isn't going to die. He can't. I won't let him. Travis admired her determination, but he could see the fear lurking beneath her brave word. He made a decision that would change everything. Sarah, I want to pay for your grandfather's surgery. She looked at him with confusion. What do you mean? I mean, I want to cover all the medical expense, the surgery, the hospital stay, everything. I can afford it, and I want to help. For a moment, hope flickered in Sarah's eyes. Then she shook her head firmly. Grandpa Zeke would never allow that. He'd rather die than take what he calls handouts. What if he doesn't have to know where the money came from? Travis suggested. What if we told him it was from your singing, that people heard about his story and donated? Sarah considered this carefully. That might work, she said slowly, but it would have to be a lot of people donating. Grandpa Zeke is smart. He'd know that my little donations at the diner couldn't pay for heart surgery. Travis was already forming a plan. What if we organized a big fundraising event? Something public, where lots of people could contribute. We could make it seem like the community came together to help. Before Sarah could respond, a doctor appeared in the cafeteria doorway. Looking around until his eyes settled on them, Travis could tell immediately from the man's expression that he was bringing serious news. Are you Seraphina's guardian? The doctor asked Travis as he approached their table. I'm a family friend, Travis replied carefully. How is Ezekiel? The doctor glanced at Sarah, clearly unsure how much to say in front of a child. Mr. Ezekiel's condition has stabilized for now, but I'm afraid it's quite serious. His heart is severely damaged, and without surgical intervention within the next 48 to 72 hours, I'm not confident about his chances. Sarah's face went pale, but she spoke up with surprising composure. What kind of surgery does he need? A complex procedure called a coronary artery bypass, possibly combined with valve replacement. It's major surgery, but it's his best chance for recovery. And how much would that cost? Travis asked. The doctor hesitated. Including pre-op, surgery, recovery, and follow-up. We're looking at approximately $180,000 to $220,000. Travis saw Sarah's face crumple as the reality of that number hit her. Even at her current rate of fundraising, it would take her years to raise that kind of money. Years that her grandfather didn't have. Doctor, Travis said firmly, if I could guarantee payment, could you schedule the surgery immediately? If payment is guaranteed, yes. We could have him in surgery as early as tomorrow morning. Then consider it guaranteed, Travis said without hesitation. The doctor looked surprised but relieved. I'll need you to speak with our financial department to work out the detail. After the doctor left, Sarah stared at Travis with a mixture of gratitude and worry. Travis, I can't let you spend that much money on her. It's too much. Sarah, Travis said, taking her small hands in his, your grandfather helped build the place where I've made my career, where I've achieved my dream. In a way, I owe him more than I could ever repay. This isn't charity, it's just returning a favor. Tears streamed down Sarah's face. But for the first time since they had arrived at the hospital, they were tears of relief rather than fear. But what do we tell Grandpa Zeke? She asked. Travis smiled. We tell him that his granddaughter is more loved by this community than he ever imagined. And then we make sure that's actually true. As they walked back toward the cardiac unit, Travis was already making mental plans. He was going to organize the biggest, most spectacular fundraising event Kansas City had ever seen. And he was going to make sure that Ezekiel never questioned where the money came from. But first, he had to make sure the man survived long enough to benefit from it. Within hours of his conversation with Sarah in the hospital, Travis had set in motion a plan that would require every connection, every favor, and every ounce of influence he had built during his career. He started with a single phone call to his team's public relations director, explaining that he needed to organize a community fundraising event with less than 24 hours' notice. Travis, that's impossible, he said. Events like that take weeks to plan. Then we're going to do the impossible, Travis replied firmly. I need Arrowhead Stadium available tonight. I need a sound system, lighting, and I need every local news station there. Whatever it costs, I'll cover it." Word spread through Kansas City like wildfire. Social media exploded with posts about the mysterious fundraising event at Arrowhead Stadium. Local radio stations picked up the story, and by noon, Save Sarah's grandpa was trending citywide. Meanwhile, at the hospital, Ezekiel had been moved to a private room where he was stable but weak. Travis had quietly arranged for the best cardiac surgeon in the region to take over his case, flying the specialist in from Chicago. When Sarah asked how they had managed to get such a renowned doctor, Travis simply said that the hospital had called in a favor. "I don't understand what's happening," Ezekiel said weakly, as Travis sat beside his bed. "Sarah tells me there's some kind of event being organized. People I don't even know are trying to help us." Travis chose his words carefully. "Sir, you spent your whole life building things that brought joy to other people. Now, those people want to give something back. Sarah's story has touched a lot of hearts. I never wanted to be anybody's charity case," Ezekiel murmured, but Travis could see that he was too weak to put up much resistance. "It's not charity," Travis said gently. "It's community. It's what happens when people realize that someone who has given his whole life to building their city needs their help in return." By 6 o'clock that evening, Arrowhead Stadium was filling with people. Travis had called in every favor he could think of. Local musicians had volunteered to perform. Chiefs players had shown up to sign autographs and meet fans. Local businesses had donated food and services. But the centerpiece of the evening was Sarah herself. Travis had set up a small stage on the field where she could perform for the crowd. As word spread about the little girl who sang to save her grandfather, more and more people had come to hear her voice for themselves. Sarah stood behind the microphone, looking out at the thousands of people who had gathered in the stadium where her grandfather had once worked. She was wearing the same blue dress she always wore to perform, but Travis had arranged for professional lighting that made her look like an angel in the field. "Hi, everyone," she said, her voice carrying clearly through the stadium's sound system. "My name is Serafina, but everyone calls me Sarah. I want to thank you all for being here tonight." The crowd was completely silent, hanging on every word from this tiny girl who had captured their heart. "My grandpa Zeke taught me that when you love someone, you never give up on them. He never gave up on me when I needed him, and I'm not giving up on him now. But I can't do this alone." She paused, looking up at the luxury boxes where she knew Travis was watching, with the hospital staff who had brought Ezekiel to witness the event. Even in his weakened condition, her grandfather had insisted on coming to hear her sing. "This song is for my Grandpa Zeke, and for everyone who believes that love is stronger than anything else in the world." What happened next would be talked about in Kansas City for years to come. Sarah began to sing, and her voice filled every corner of Arrowhead Stadium with a power and emotion that left 70,000 people complete silent. She sang about love, about family, about never giving up on the people who matter most. As her voice soared through the night air, something magical began to happen. People in the crowd started holding up their phone, creating a sea of lights that twinkled like stars. Others began to sing along, their voices joining with Sarah's in a chorus that seemed to reach the heavens themselves. In the luxury box, Ezekiel sat in his wheelchair with tears streaming down his face. "That's my granddaughter," he whispered to the nurse beside him. "That's my little girl." Travis stood at the back of the box, watching the crowd's reaction and feeling his own eyes fill with tears. He had organized many events in his career, had played in front of crowds this size countless times, but he had never witnessed anything as powerful as what was happening on that field. When Sarah's song ended, the stadium erupted in applause that lasted for nearly 10 minutes. But the real magic was just beginning. The donations that poured in that night exceeded everyone's wildest expectation. The official fundraising goal had been $200,000 for Ezekiel's surgery. By the end of the evening, they had raised over $800,000. Local news crews interviewed person after person who had come to contribute. A construction worker who had worked alongside Ezekiel years earlier donated his entire week's paycheck. A teacher brought her whole classroom's piggy bank saving. An elderly woman who had never even met them handed over her late husband's watch to be auctioned. "This isn't just about one man or one little girl," said Margaret Holloway, a longtime Kansas City resident who had contributed $500. This is about remembering that we're all connected, that the person who built our schools and stadiums and hospitals deserves our support when he needs it most. But perhaps the most moving moment came when Thaddeus, the waiter from Moonbeam Diner, took the microphone to address the crowd. "I've watched Sarah come to our restaurant every night for 3 months," he said, his voice shaking with emotion. "I've seen her count every dollar, every quarter, hoping it would be enough to save the man who raised her. Tonight, you've all shown her that she was never alone in this fight." As the evening wound down, Travis made his way onto the field where Sarah was sitting quietly, overwhelmed by everything that had happened. "How do you feel?" he asked, sitting down beside her on the grass. "I feel like I'm dreaming," Sarah said softly. "All these people came here for Grandpa Zeke. They don't even know him, but they came anyway. They came because your love for him inspired them," Travis explained. "You showed them what it means to never give up on family." The next morning, Ezekiel's surgery was performed by the best cardiac team money could buy. Travis waited in the surgical waiting room alongside Sarah, both of them nervously watching the clock as hours ticked by. When the surgeon finally emerged, his face tired but smiling. "The surgery was a complete success," he announced. "Mr. Ezekiel's heart is functioning beautifully. With proper recovery and care, he should have many good years ahead of him." Sarah collapsed into Travis's arms, sobbing with relief and joy. All the fear, all the worry, all the sleepless nights had led to this moment. 6 weeks later, Ezekiel was released from the hospital with a clean bill of health. The remaining funds from the fundraiser had been set up in a trust for Sarah's education, ensuring that she would be able to pursue any dreams she chose. Travis arranged for one final surprise. On a crisp autumn afternoon, he brought Ezekiel and Sarah to Arrowhead Stadium for a private tour. They walked through the areas that Ezekiel had helped build, with the older man pointing out specific sections and sharing stories of the work he had done. "It looks different from this angle," Ezekiel said, as they stood on the field where Sarah had performed just weeks earlier. "How so?" Travis asked. "From up in the stand, building it, it was just work," Ezekiel replied. "But standing down here, knowing that this is where dreams come true, where people come together, it feels like I was part of something bigger than stood." Sarah took her grandfather's hand and looked up at the empty stadium seat. "You were always part of something bigger, Grandpa. You just needed the right people to help you see it." Certainty. As they walked off the field together, Travis reflected on how much his own life had changed since that night when he had stumbled upon Sarah singing in Moonbeam Diner. He had thought he was helping them, but they had taught him something invaluable about what truly mattered in life. The story of Sarah, Ezekiel, and Travis became legendary in Kansas City. But more than that, it became a reminder that sometimes the most important victories happen not on the field, but in the quiet moment when we choose to care for one another. Sarah continued to sing, but now she performed at events across the city, inspiring others with her story of determination and love. Ezekiel returned to his role as her biggest supporter, attending every performance with pride beaming from his face. And Travis learned that the greatest touchdown of his career had nothing to do with football at all. It was the moment he realized that true success is measured not by what we achieve for ourselves, but by what we do for others when they need us most. The last image anyone who was there would remember was of Sarah and Ezekiel walking hand in hand out of Arrowhead Stadium, their shadows long in the afternoon sun, proof that with enough love and determination, even the most impossible dreams can come true. And in Kansas City, whenever anyone doubted whether one person could make a difference, they would remember the story of a 10-year-old girl who sang her way into the hearts of an entire city, and the football player who learned that the most important game he would ever play was the one that helped keep a family together.